This is ChannelPro Weekly, episode 269, with guest Paco Lebron from Prodigy Techs. Recorded Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 269. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor for the ChannelPro Network, and your host of this fine show for managed service providers, IT providers, solution providers, folks like that do technology solutions and service other businesses. That if that sounds like you, you're in the right place. And we are glad to have you here because we have a fascinating discussion coming up with an awesome guest, one who's been on the show before. For those who are longtime listeners or viewers, you'll instantly recognize the voice or the face. He's as handsome as ever. He is the founder and CEO of ProdigyTechs.com, serving as an MSP dedicated to evolving technology stuff and people who want to embrace it. He has over 15 years of experience in the IT industry, probably a little bit more than that these days, focusing on small business consulting and solutions. He's also the host of the MSP Unplugged podcast. Please welcome the one, the only, Paco Lebron. Welcome, Paco.
Ahoy, everybody. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing well. I hope our audience is doing well. It's great to have you back joining us. You mentioned right before we got started that you were excited that you finally noticed that we had a new episode.
Yeah. So, I think once ChannelPro had a lot of that transition and changes happening, I think it was either a year ago, 2 years ago or so. I know I was super bummed on some of the growth that was happening and kind of the new directions on certain roles and people. And so, just plugging around my day, and all of a sudden I see a new ChannelPro weekly episode pop up. So I was super stoked. I think I told you and Rich before that was my go-to podcast every Friday, driving from the office in the hour-long Chicago traffic, as you probably are aware, Matt.
I'm well aware of the traffic, and we were glad to be your companion on those long commutes. We had a little bit meatier show back then than we do now, but we still have a lot of great stuff to offer, and we encourage everyone to subscribe like Paco has and take us with you day to day. So Paco, it's been a while since you've been on, obviously. Tell us what you've been up to and what's new with you.
Yeah, no. So still running Prodigy Techs, MSP out of downtown Chicago, or Chicago proper, as those in my parts of sound would say. Matt, I don't know if I discussed this before, but I never knew Chicago proper was a thing until I was at an event. I think it was either I think it might have been actually at a ChannelPro event where someone was saying, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Oh, Chicago." "Oh, where are you about?" And he was like, "Oh, Naperville, Aurora." I was like, "Wait, that's not Chicago." He was like, "Oh, you're Chicago proper." I was like, "Wait, what is that?" And so this whole explanation to me, being a city kid, it was one of those where didn't know that was an actual thing. So, but yes, an MSP out of Chicago proper. I've been running Prodigy Techs now going on 11 years. Been in the industry for, as Matt mentioned, over 15 years, and really just providing our business solutions in cybersecurity, automation, AI, and along with managed services in the cybersecurity field, all into the construction, legal, and the manufacturing verticals, and trying to assist as best we can. So we're at about 11 people nowadays. We're really driving home with a lot of our fully remote MSP and just trying to get everything all buttoned up so that we can mitigate as much risk as possible for our clients, so that we can make them as defensible as possible, so that they are not deemed negligent to their end users. So trying to say that 3 times fast. But that's what's going on with my MSP. And then, as you mentioned, so we're still hosting MSP Unplugged with my co-host and business partner, Rick Smith, making all kinds of trouble over there to help the sub $3 million MSPs to get a good piece of the pie as they are trying to venture in this world known as the MSP managed services arena.
Awesome. It looks like things are going well. Your growth has actually been pretty striking over the years. I think when I met you, you were only, I don't know if it was just you or if you had just 2 or 3 people with you, but that's amazing growth over the years. Congratulations on that. And I do recommend the MSP Unplugged podcast. It is a good one. It's one that I try to tune into week to week. So the reason why I have you on is because I wanted to talk about something that you said. It's kind of a concept that you're abiding by these days, and that is the concept of getting to good. And I found that fascinating. Tell us what getting to good means and what that is.
Sure. Yeah. So the phrase getting to good has been something I've been really trying to talk about probably in the last several years. And so what I mean by that is, I think that we've gotten to a point now in our industry where there's several concepts or things that happen. You have the shiny object syndrome that a lot of my peers will fall into. There are those that are getting introduced to new technologies, automation, a lot of RPA systems that are out there trying to choose between those. There are the AI and along with other different types of AI platforms and trying to figure out what platforms you want to get to there. But when I try to peel back, where this overwhelming frustration or where it comes to those that are just trying to figure out what to do, I think we tend to really not understand or try to really forge that foundation piece. I think a lot of us tend to focus on everything but the foundation, and we're really looking at all these great solutions and a lot of influencers in our space trying that are hyping up some of these things, AI, automation, whatever the case may be, but we haven't got to good, meaning we haven't done the basics that can help provide a strong foundation for our companies. And we oftentimes get bit by that, whether it's a ransomware outbreak or it's, you got in trouble with a client because you started something 50% and then you said you'd get back to it, and now it caused an unplanned work event and now you have to go and repeat work and things of that nature. And so I've been on this thing for the last couple of years where how do we get to good and understanding you're providing your services for your sized clients. And I think that we just get enamored with all these like strategies and opportunities and what could be. But with who we have currently right now, we're not really taking to heart and really understanding where we are to just do even the basics to just get to that good. It's one of those concepts where if you do 1% a day, you're 1% better than the day before. And so that's where kind of that phrase has come to. I'd have to say that it wasn't something that I came to know on my own. There is another a former MSP owner, John Dubinsky, out in who was of the Maven Group in Grand Rapids, who has since sold his practice, but has been a very dear mentor of mine, and just kind of just shooting the stuff and really just having that conversation of how 75 to 80% of MSPs out there are probably not even doing the just basics, but are so enamored by the new technologies that are out there that if they just focused a little bit more, they'd be a lot further along, whether that's revenue goals, operational goals, even down to the point of just saving some time for their end-to-end days that they want to enjoy themselves.
Yeah, let's dive in a little bit on what some of maybe the specific things are that they're not doing to get to good. So what are some of those basic things that they're falling behind on?
Sure. So, I think that, for us to say to get to good, right? Like and everyone's going to hate me for saying this, but like, have you confirmed or developed a strategy to make sure MFA is on for everybody? That's one of those where have you checked that box, right? Have you even completed the first step of a security framework, such as, let's say, CIS? Have you inventoried all of your clients? Do you know where everything is? Can you say that an equipment piece that you sold to a client, you have properly patched it, installed all your stuff on it, and you don't have that problem? So being able to develop just processes and importantly, IT documentation, really being able to drive and doing some of those basics will solve so much more headache down the line. I mean, how many times I've heard of peers say, I reset the password on this device and forgot what the device is. I can't get into it. Now I have to reset it. And I blew out a couple hours to rebuild everything because I made the change and somehow it didn't save, or somehow I forgot, or someone was on site and didn't properly document their change. It's things like that where we just tend to not take some of the basic foundational pieces that caused ripple effects later down the line, similar to a book called The Phoenix Project, where if you don't understand what the theories of constraints are, you're not going to be able to go forward with the things you really want to do with your business.
Yeah, well, it's like rushing through everything seems to be the norm these days, but taking that extra little bit of time to do things right will save you a lot of time down the road, from having to fix a lot of those mistakes or things like that you forgot about. So
Yep.
so what are if what would you recommend to a peer to be like the first thing that they need to do to start going down the path of getting to good?
Sure. So if you are an MSP, I think it behooves me to say that you should have some type of security focus of some sort. I personally believe you cannot be an MSP nowadays without some type of security focus, down to some of the documentation and things that have been passed by the government. Other governing bodies have provided a lot of descriptions of what an MSP should be. So my personal opinion would be is to start with some type of cybersecurity framework. I think we all tried to figure out, all right, I need an AV, I need some patching, how do I do this managed service thing? Because there are quite a bit of peers out there that are doing break fix into the managed services arena. And so, and then there are those MSPs that are just kind of getting their monthly recurring income, but may not have a structured something they can put on paper to say that they're doing correctly or they're doing right, or have they inventory everything that they've deployed, or even know what the costs are for certain things. So picking a cybersecurity framework or some type of framework that you can adhere to gives you that baseline to appeal to. So for example, for us, we chose CIS version 8. So that framework is what helps us get to good. Can we get from step 1 or control 1 to control 2? Okay, if we're done with control 2, can we get to control 3? And really being able to just flow through a checklist or a step list to get through there. Now, again, this is the framework that I've chosen. There's so many different frameworks that are out there. There's also different types of mentors and peer groups that have their own type of frameworks to help better your business as well. My suggestion is picking one of those and being able to adhere to that, whether your focus is business operations or it's going to be cybersecurity. I think, in our opinion, cybersecurity is kind of that foundational piece that where we're building our practice up. But your mileage may vary for those that are trying to figure out what they do want to do to get to good. But essentially, is you need something that's going to hold you accountable, and oftentimes a framework or some type of governing item or group can help with that.
So for the MSPs who are at good, right? Let's say
Mhm.
that they're there.
Mhm.
What's beyond good? So I know that you're kind of on a tear of dealing with standardization and dealing with standardization and repetitive tasks. Let's talk a little
Yep.
bit about that. What are some of the things that MSPs can do to standardize? Like, what does that mean? Like, what are we trying to do with that?
Sure. So, I have to borrow a little bit from when the article that Channel Pro did when I spoke with Colleen way back when, on really diving into what does standardization mean to me and how does that work. So, for example, I would be remiss to say having a plan to go into something is going to be more than enough. So once you get to good, as you mentioned, and doing those standardization pieces, how do you help predict your workload that's coming in, right? And so the ability to do that is, all right, do you have a IP schema that you have built out that when a specific particular device is? So for example, we have a schema where, from dot 10 to dot X is going to be the networking equipment, is dot 25 to, I'm sorry, dot 20 to 29 is going to be printers and things like that. So being able to build out something of that nature, we've standardized our IP schema. Well, you may be listening and say, well, I don't give a damn about that. What does that have to anything about IP addresses? They're all just numbers. Well, for me, when we're reviewing and auditing, taking inventory for our clients, if we see a printer on dot 244, I know someone plugged in a printer that they didn't tell us about, because we've standardized on that alerting. Not only do we have that standardized, we can have the alerting enabled to be able to tell us that something is out of scope, or even to a point of, if you have a product that allows you to warn you when something is getting plugged in that's outside of scope, serves you even better. So that's one example of standardization. The other thing for standardization is just your ticket flow and your workflow of how you work on things. For us, we do things a little bit differently. Normally, for a lot of our peers, they'll identify an issue by the type of issue or what's causing the issue. So whether it's a printer, whether it's a computer, um, internet is out, things of that nature. For us, we actually separate them in a different type of category. We do it with the 4 types of work is what we call it. And so what we do is we identify what's unplanned work, meaning something that broke, change requests, password resets, they're asking for a change, things of that nature. A business project, meaning that they're identifying a project for us to do, whether those are onboardings, whether those are office moves, things of that nature, or internal projects that are something that we're doing internally. So we actually separate all of our work to those 4 categories, and then our subcategories are printers, et cetera, and that things. But the reason why we do that standardization is because if I could tell you you can prevent unplanned work, you think you'd look at me with a face of, what, I don't understand what you mean. It's unplanned. How can you prevent unplanned work? What turns out you can. It just depends on, again, getting back to good. And I'll give you an example. You could be on an onsite, and this actually just happened to us a few years ago, where we had a client, we went ahead, we did a whole retrofit of their office. Turned out we were one Cat6 cable short to wiring the client's computer. So we connected it to the Wi-Fi and we said, we'll come back to it. Well, everyone knows when you come back to something, whether you put in a power surge temporarily or surge protector or whatever, if you didn't document it, if it doesn't live in your PSA or your ticketing system or in some type of note-taking app, because I know there are those that don't use a PSA, which that's a whole nother conversation. It's out of mind, out of sight. Well, come to find out, they had a bad Wi-Fi interruption. It was the main partner that this cable happened. He's not the most patient for things like that. And so we literally had to scramble somebody emergency, go down there, figure out what happened. Come to find out, it was the WAP that just wasn't working properly. We had to reboot it. Everything was fine. But because of all these steps that we had went through, had we just hardwired the item, the docking station to the laptop, we would have prevented all that cost and that unplanned work. And so that's why we categorize these and we build our metrics off of this so that we can identify what is truly an unplanned event, or is there some user education that's involved because we internally didn't really understand what the issue was.
So what role does automation play in improving all of this? Because it sounds like a lot of repetitive kind of tasks and those things. And AI is a big conversation right now. So what kind of ways can we automate? How can we leverage automation to standardize service delivery?
Sure. I think for me, it personally starts at the PSA. I think that really helps on how are you intaking or how are you ingesting any of the work requests, things that need to be done day to day. How do you automate those? And usually a lot of the PSAs nowadays have some type of automation, if this, then that type of components to allow you to provide some type of automated fashion, whether that is a particular type of issue that is reported inside. It could be a type of alert, things of that nature, being able to build those out. And I'm not talking about the things that are out of box, but really diving more into like looking at device IDs and hardware IDs for certain things, because it's a possibility that that's not being monitored appropriately because you've noticed that this tends to be a more accurate way of reporting, or being able to automate an ability of a particular device or a particular line of business software to reboot itself or restart that service that is not built out of box, that you get a call because the server rebooted, but it doesn't have an auto startup on that line of business software. Being able to build something of that nature, really being able to utilize the tools and the if this then that statements inside of a PSA tend to help much more easier. And it helps route a lot of the information as well, especially when it comes to ticketing. And that I think is death by ticket, where you have something that you set up email to ticket. There's not a lot that can be done to that unless you set up a lot of these things, but you really have to figure out what are you getting, like you again getting to good, what's coming in, what is ingesting, and what's causing you to do a lot of manual work, and then being able to identify those into a category or several categories, and then building off your metrics from there. I've often seen where PSAs are often built with so many rules, and when they could have been probably categorized in a particular way to be able to do so. There's a book that I read, I believe it's called the PSA Impact. It was a former guest of yours that you had, Chris Tim, I believe. I'll have to think about that. I'll get that link over to Matt for the show notes if possible. But that really helped identify how to really categorize and generate and really work on the how to use your PSA as automated as possible. Now, this is how we used to do it prior to a lot of the PSAs now implementing AI, which is a whole nother conversation of how it's helping you build automation versus you manually having to build those automations inside of your platform.
So you, like everyone else, I'm sure, is playing around with AI, and looking at ways that it can help improve these automations or streamline business processes. What are some of the surprising benefits that you've seen of implementing AI-driven processes, for things like these repeatable tasks in your operation, or other things that you've streamlined with it?
Sure. So, for as far as streamlining processes, I think that for my team, for example, we have a lot of admin. We have an admin, we have a customer, our TAMs, and we have those that are kind of newer to the MSP world. And so they're trying to understand little nuances, FAQs, things of that nature, and utilizing AIs like Copilot, being able to utilize the AI that's built into our PSAs, our RMMs, that has been able to provide them information to their fingertips versus having to ping me on Teams because, so as you mentioned earlier in the show, Matt, it was me for the first 7 years of the business, and then the last 4 to 5, I've had now employees. So 7 years of knowing where the mines are is pretty tiring to have to try and stop what I'm doing while trying to build the business and strategize to then work on something technical, figure out a detail oriented thing of that, and being able to use that AI piece of it for them to not just have to Google a search of some sort, but being able to utilize AI to piece together what was needed for a solution, even down to making sure that what they're saying is appropriate, has helped a long way. Not only for just improvement of efficiency inside the business, but also utilizing AI for like trying to build solutions for our clients as well has been also helpful as well. Because I think the main issue with AI is that there's so many of them. And so everyone has a language model. Everyone has the ability to do X. And where do you want to kind of plant your flag on that side? And so being able to utilize some of that into your day to day has been very helpful. For us, we were big Chat GPTs until users until we started utilizing Copilot, got all our data sensitivity labels and things of that nature all done internally before we flipped it on. And it has really drove a lot of just efficiency in the fact of finding detail of data we had. We just sometimes, as all business owners, a little unorganized, but thus being able to have that efficiency to reorganize that data and really being able to put through on things like, where are the client agreements that we had that said X so that we can reply versus Paco, who signed the agreement X amount of years ago, now at their fingertips. So individual operational efficiency definitely has helped internally with the AI pieces, along with some other things inside of our PSAs and RMM. The AI pieces in there have been super helpful, including for us, where they have summarization of tickets and things of that nature, where I don't have to go through an entire ticket chain. I can literally click a button and it can tell me this is what happened, how many times internally we reached out, here's where we're at right now, and there's just so much more that's coming as well.
So what about in compliance management and cybersecurity? What do you see? What ways do you see automation helping with those areas?
I think for us, where the AI pieces will go, our PSA is going to have the ability to, which is being built out right now, is to have the ability to figure out your total inventory of systems. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, as what's going to be advertised is, having the ability to identify all of your stack in particular avenues of your assets and making sure that they're all checked, the boxes are checked. And not only are the boxes checked, but being able to understand that it's being monitored. I mean, I think there's been multiple times where, a computer's been replaced and we're assuming our software has been installed and the BitLocker's encrypting the system and all of our EDRs and all the alphabet soup of systems that we have installed should be monitored on a regular basis by alerting. But oftentimes now we're going to be able to say, well, guess what? We onboarded client X. We only got 85% of their assets onboarded with our current stack. We need to fix that. We need to re-onboard that system, whether there was a process missed, whether there was something of installation that was missed, things of that nature is really where that's going to help out. Along with some other items that where being able to just focus on the things that you had to manually do, being able to check those boxes and understand that AI can help provide that additional lens that you could put like an Iron Man helmet to help augment what you need.
So I got time for one last question. So what advice would you give to fellow MSPs about some of the common challenges that they're going to face when integrating AI and automation, and what can they do to kind of overcome some of those?
Yeah, I think that, as I mentioned before, there's so many that are out there. There's so many that are coming. I think you just have to get to a point where what are the integrations? Because I think we're going to get to a point where, as tools are integrating with each other, I think we're going to get to the point where AIs are going to start integrating with each other. And so being able to understand your tool set, what your stack is, right? And if you don't know what your stack is, keeping an inventory, how are they working together across the framework that you may have, and then how is AI going to solve that? Is Copilot the answer for you to be able to do so, to help with your productivity? Is it a AI known as like TurboDocs that helps those that are writing documents in Word docs that help put those pieces together for productivity? Everyone's mileage will vary, and there's different strokes for different folks, right? And so being able to understand what AIs are out there, there's just so many of them, see what your current stack is suggesting, and also know that some of your tools already probably have a lot of that integrated inside of it. So there's no reason to really recreate the wheel if it's already being implemented or in the future going to be putting into the system as well. Like a lot of our AI efforts have been halted because we've been told by some of the integrations from some of our platforms on what they're planning to bring in. So the amount of time of learning and building, it'll already be there by that time. So thus having those conversations with your partners, with your vendors, and really just seeing what's out there. But if it is of interest and you want to see what all AIs that are out there, maybe ask the AI of how many AIs that are out there and see where you want to go from there. But no, I kid. But, I think just being able to stay, have your finger on the pulse, reviewing ChannelProNetwork.com, just making sure you keep up on that, going to your trusted news source to keep on the day-to-day, because it's always changing much faster than the cloud revolution that we had prior. AI is going much faster than that.
That it is. It's a lot to think about. Great advice. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about that. Unfortunately, we're out of time for this segment, but folks, Paco's not leaving quite yet. We're going to be back on the other side of the break. He's going to answer our 3 questions in our 3 question segment, so you won't want to miss that. And we'll talk a little bit about events that are coming up down the road, a few headlines that are on the site right now, and more. Stick ahead. We will be right back. And we are back now on the other side of the break. Paco Lebron from Prodigy Tech is still with us, and he is in the hot seat because he is going to answer 3 questions in our 3 questions segment, where we're going to hit him with 3 hot take questions and get his quick answers on that. Paco, welcome to the hot seat. Are you ready?
Oh, it's burning as ever, Matt. Let's go.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. What's one thing MSPs need to automate right now to drive efficiency?
Has to be their ticket management. They have to be able to automate, help create the creation, categories, routing, you name it. You have to get your ticket management automated to be able to be much more efficient.
Excellent. Question number 2. What benefits have you seen when MSPs adopt AI-driven process automation?
I've seen faster response times, better efficiencies on finding details and information. Depending on where you're looking, that's really where adopting AI on whatever service are offering or your solution is where you're going to find that better response times and efficiencies for including that AI.
Question number 3. What's the biggest obstacle when it comes to automation, and how can MSPs address it?
I think it's got to be, as I mentioned, the integrations. I think trying to figure out what's going to integrate with what AI and AI will be end up integrating with each other, or even down to the systems. I think that's probably the biggest obstacle right now is the integrations. And there's so many out there, which one to choose and kind of anchor your flag as you're building foundation.
All right, and thanks, Paco, for answering our 3 questions in our 3 questions segment. Very insightful. I know we kind of talked a little bit about some of those things at the beginning of the show, but it's good to kind of have it all wrapped up nicely with a bow on it. So awesome stuff. Paco, I really appreciate you coming on to talk to us today. We're not going to say goodbye quite yet because you, of all people, I can turn to say, hey, Paco, we do a lot of events around the country, in person and online. And why should people go to them? And I'm asking you because you've been to many of them.
Yeah, no. So it's funny, right? And so I'm super bummed this year because this is the first year that I have missed our local ChannelPro Network live event. I was actually out for a wedding, and although for a good cause, it is my favorite event because it was my first event when I first started my MSP. And so, you know, there are a lot of great organizers of events out there, but I think ChannelPro Network allows for having a little bit of fun while being serious at the same time. I think that they make it so that it's not the same. You're getting speaking, you're not getting spoke at. It's not, a cram full of session. They're really great, putting in some great value and some time as they're organizing a lot of just peer conversations, vendor conversations that are investing in the industry and everything in between. And plus, those are just the live network events. And now you have your defend events that I'm super stoked to attend one of those as well, which I believe one is coming up, if not already. I believe it's in August. That will be on the East Coast this time. So I'm sure a lot of our East Coast listeners are going to be stoked to take a look at that. But yeah, it's one of my favorite events to go to. Again, super bummed I couldn't go this year, but I will be sure to make sure I will be there next year.
Wow, I couldn't have said any of that better myself. And you're right, Channel Pro Defend is coming up. That's our next in-person event. That's coming up on August 7th and 8th in Island, New Jersey. I really encourage folks to go and register and head out for that one. It's going to be 2 days of cybersecurity knowledge and information and sessions and breakouts and all kinds of great stuff. And of course, a lot of networking opportunities as well, which is just as important as some of the content at these events. So really encourage folks to check that out. Later on in the year, we are going to be in North Carolina, in Charlotte for our live event. And we're doing another one of those in Dallas as well. And of course, if you miss Defend on the East Coast, there is now a West Coast Defend because, it's hard if you're on the East Coast to go all the way to the West Coast. So we've made it easy, folks. There's a Defend event in November in LA. Make sure that you register for one of those and don't miss it. And of course, we have online events as well. Our next deep dive is actually tomorrow, so it'll already have happened by the time you see this episode. But we've got one of our product roundup events coming up and another deep dive later in the year. Go to events.channelpronetwork.com. Follow Paco's advice. Make sure that you get to these and join us for those. And of course, he even mentioned the website too. And I didn't even pay him to say any of this stuff. How about that? Visit channelpronetwork.com each and every day. There you'll find the latest headlines, news, resources, and white papers, all kinds of great stuff to help keep you on top of what's going on in this industry and help you grow your business and make more money. We've got a couple headlines up on there right now. 7 essential marketing tips for MSPs to master online success, AI and the MSP. Friend, foe, or frenemy. Very interesting read. I encourage you to check that out. And a sad and difficult decision. This will be very recent in the news when we're recording this. A little bit less new by the time you hear the show. But Kaspersky was forced to wind down their U.S. operations. We've got their response on the website there. Very, very interesting story that we've been tracking. So go and check that out. ChannelProNetwork.com. Make sure you go there and see those every day. And of course, subscribe to Channel Pro Weekly everywhere podcasts are found. We are in all of them. I promise you. We are also in, if you like to watch, we're on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, hit all the buttons, and join us every time we have a new episode there. We really appreciate that. And of course, if you can, tell a friend or colleague about Channel Pro Weekly, so that way you've got something to discuss with them each week at the water cooler or on the job site. Because, that's how you grow, is you hear things and then you discuss internally and bounce ideas, and that's how you improve and get better. So why improve alone? Improve with a buddy. That's what I always say. So do that, and we really appreciate it. Paco, I really appreciate you coming on again and being a guest here on the show again, and we'll look forward to having you back. In the meantime, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, follow you, listen to MSP Unplugged, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name Paco Lebron. Feel free to just drop me a note there. That's the best way to get a hold of me. You can tune in to MSP Unplugged. We are available weekly with my good friend and business partner Rick Smith. And then we also have our own shindig in September as well, which I believe our very own Jay-Z Spinner will be showing up at our event as well in September. So it'll be a great time for TechCon Unplugged, and we'll go from there.
Wow, the mayor's making an appearance. How about that? Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and thanks to all of our listening audience and viewing audience for joining us this week. And we will be back with more in Channel Pro Weekly number 270 next week. Until then, take care.